Clark Summers is playing bass, and of course he's one of the top bass players I think in Chicago. And I don't remember if I've ever done a gig with him before or not. I think I wanted to, but I can't remember if I have. The other two guys I have, I've played with Andrew Lawrence before. He's playing piano, and I think he's also going to bring his organ, keyboard or something, so we can do some more of the organ stuff. And then Greg Archery is playing drums, and both those guys I've played with before at the Whistler, and probably some other place too. But I think I mainly remember the Whistler gig that we used to do. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited to play with those guys.
Hey everybody, Mike Jeffers, ChicagoJazz.com, and welcome to another episode of Around Town. Today we have Greg Duncan. He is coming into town July 20th. He's going to be playing at the Epiphany Center for the Arts. Of course, it's 201 South Ashland Avenue, right there in the West Loop. Incredible spot. Incredible acoustics. I'm assuming he's up in the sanctuary because that's the best spot to hear some intimate jazz, and that's what Greg's going to be bringing to Chicago when he comes back. And I said come back because he was from Chicago. He lived in Chicago, so many of you might remember Greg playing around town back then. He now lives in Philadelphia. And Greg, welcome to the show. Thanks for being on, and glad you're coming back to Chicago.
Yeah, thanks for having me on here, Mike.
No problem. So let's talk a little bit. You've got a recording out, Sound Duality, and you recorded that just during or just after the pandemic, I think. And you moved to Philadelphia just before the pandemic. So you had kind of a whirlwind of a couple of years there. Talk a little bit about this recording, and I'm assuming you're going to play tunes from the new recording, Sound Duality, on the July 20th gig over at Epiphany. So talk a little bit about the recording.
Yeah, it's a kind of a combination of some different sounds that I wanted to work with. One was the organ sound, because some people might know that I used to live in Charlottesville in Virginia, and at that time I started to experiment with organ. There was this organ player in town named Jonah Kane, I think, and it was really a great opportunity to kind of play in a more trio setting. So since that time, I really started to kind of dig the just that whole tradition. There's such a great jazz organ tradition of tunes and players, and it's just its own style. So I wanted to record some of that, and then I also wanted to record just a traditional quartet and kind of get into some more. I don't know, I guess maybe heavier stuff, or just kind of dig in more with some vibes, especially kind of coming from like Woody Shaw and trying to play some tunes that he made famous. So there are some tunes on the recording that are like there's this tune called Obsequious, which is a Larry Young tune, I think, but Woody Shaw recorded it. And then and there's just some tunes on there that I wrote as well that are kind of more bluesy, I would say. But I want to record those more with a quartet than the organ. But it's kind of a mix of the both. So
it's an interesting sound. I mean, I love organ, and the beauty of the organ is that it sounds like it sounds like three more people in your band if you have an organ player playing, and they really are playing, which is exactly what's happening on this recording. I took some listens to some of the tracks online that you have, and I know from your background when you were in Chicago, you also had a heavy influence, like because you went to North Texas, you ended up coming to Chicago from there. I think you toured with the Glenn Miller big band, so that was like the big band scene. But then you also got into like flamenco and some of the Latin side of the music, right? And that was something that you played at the Jazz Fest, I think, with a Latin feel, or you played with one of your Latin groups. I mean, you had that whole influence, and now you're bringing it back around, and now you're getting into more traditional, right, with an organ player and filling it out. I mean, how did you make that transformation? Do you like all these different styles, and you just want to encompass all the different styles in your music? Is that how you kind of conceive things when you're putting the recordings together?
Yeah, the influences are probably just based on what's going on in my life at the time. So in 2009, I moved to Spain. I went and lived there for about a year, and then I came back to Chicago. And then living in Spain, you start to just hear a lot of different sounds, and one of those sounds was just the influence of flamenco, not only in the Spanish culture but in Spanish pop music. Has a lot of flamenco aspects to it. Anyway, so I just got interested in it, and then came back and got a grant through the Illinois Arts Council, and was able to record that flamenco type jazz album. And I probably would have continued more with that project. It's just that since leaving Chicago, it's harder to find those musicians that you can really pull off that kind of project, because it's not your typical Latin project where your influences are more world based, I would say, than just Latin jazz. But anyway, the organ thing is yeah, I don't know. Just it's bluesy. It's something that has got a little more soul in it. And after going through everything that I went through in Virginia, and then just having that opportunity to play with an organ player there, it was like I really got into it, and that's why I started listening to guys like Joey DeFrancesco, Shirley Scott, trying to get more into that tradition. And it's I definitely heard it when I was in the Green Mill, because of course Chris Foreman,
right,
was such a great player. But it wasn't until later on where I really started to get into it more and wanted to play some of that music myself.
Well, and talk a little bit about the band on the recording, Sound Duality, of course, available at gregduncanmusic.com. We talked a little bit before you came on, and I think some of the people watching this will probably recognize some of the names that you have on this recording. And these are guys that you met in Philadelphia once you moved to Philadelphia, and you met, and then they went on to play with Joey DeFrancesco, right? So talk a little bit about these guys and how you put that band together, because when you listen to the recording, it's grooving, it's smoking. It's great. It's really, you guys sound like you've been playing for a long time, which means that all of you guys just gelled right together while you were doing the recording.
Yeah. Well, Lucas Brown is playing the organ, and he's been on this scene in Philly for a while. And Anwar Marshall is playing drums on there, and he's from here, but now he's more based in New York. And when everything shut down, I guess we recorded in 2021. So, I think everybody was looking for work then. So wasn't hard to, I just went knocking on their door and was able to get them. But then I guess the ironic thing was that after we recorded that organ trio thing, that's when Joey started touring with those guys. So it was probably not long after that I started seeing those guys in the same formation, but it was just with Joey playing organ and trumpet and saxophone and singing.
Yeah,
he does everything. But and then the other guys on there, Sam Harris is playing bass, and Sam is a great bass player here. Tim Bray is probably the top call pianist, jazz piano player. He's the guy that backs everybody up when they come into town, or just the main cat, I would say. Or there's other cats too, but he's one of the main ones.
Yeah.
And so it was nice to be able to find those guys and to put them all together in the same recording studio and get to make some music with them.
Yeah. Well, all right. So you're coming to Epiphany, July 20th, 8 p.m., 201 South Ashland Avenue. Of course, Epiphany, epiphany.com. All the tickets are there. You want to make sure you get your tickets in advance to go over to Epiphany. And I think they're still doing their happy hour, golden hour, which is ahead of the show, which is great. Half price drinks and appetizers. So be sure to hit that up. So talk a little bit about who's playing with you in Chicago when you come into Chicago.
Yeah. Clark Summers is playing bass, and course, he's one of the top bass players, I think, in Chicago. And I don't remember if I've ever done a gig with him before or not. I think I wanted to, but I can't remember if I have. The other two guys I have, I've played with Andrew Lawrence before. He's playing piano, and I think he's also going to bring his organ, keyboard or something, so we can do some more of the organ stuff. And then Greg Archery is playing drums. And both those guys I've played with before at the Whistler and probably some other place too, but I think I mainly remember the Whistler gig that we used to do. So, yeah, I mean, I'm excited to play with those guys and just to see, I guess, the differences in their playing since the last time that we met up, because, everybody's probably in different spaces. So much has happened since the last time that I was there in 2019.
Oh yeah. Well, those guys are familiar with Epiphany. They play up there in the sanctuary a lot, and the sound in the sanctuary, the acoustics. It's one of the most acoustically perfect rooms in the entire country. It's an old chapel from 1885, so you're going to really dig that. And people coming out to hear you there, you're going to hear all the little nuances of what that sound can be up in that space. So July 20th, Epiphany Center for the Arts, 201 South Ashland Avenue, 8 p.m. is the start time. Of course, GregDuncanMusic.com. So you're coming through Chicago. Are you doing a little bit of a short little tour? You're coming in town for a little while and then heading back to Philly, or what's your what's your itinerary when you're coming through?
Yeah, that's a good question. There might be some more stuff tacked on, but right now it's just that gig. I'm trying to get out of town and trying to basically just reconnect with some people there that I haven't seen in a while. There was I was trying to put something together, like a small thing, but that fell through, and it's also kind of challenging to get all the economics of it to work in terms of, like, is it really economically viable for me to be there longer to do a smaller gig? And so I was trying to fit that together, but I don't know. We'll see. There might be some other stuff tacked on, but as of now, there's just the Epiphany thing.
Good. All right. Well, everybody can find you, of course, GregDuncanMusic.com. And thanks for jumping on, man. I'm glad we were in contact here and there throughout the years you were in Chicago, but I don't think we ever met. But I'm glad that we're talking now, and it's fascinating to hear your story. We'll have to spend more time at some point. I'd love to talk about Spain and you living in Spain and getting into all of that as well. So we'll have to do something like that the next time you come back through Chicago. But I'm glad we could jump on today for a few minutes to talk about this gig. So again, Epiphany Center for the Arts, 8 p.m., July 20th, Greg Duncan quartet. I suppose it would be a quartet that night. It's great. Thanks for being on, man. I appreciate it.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Mike. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. And of course, thanks everybody for watching. As I always say, all things jazz in Chicago at chicagojazz.com. And until next time, hopefully I will see somebody out on the scene.